Okay, so for this week, like our historical, spiritual leader is Robert Frank. I don't know if we had one last week, although I know we went over Bresson. But in terms of like 35 millimeter, there's so many great artists to look at, and I'll put a list up on this week. Definitely, you can look at Bresson. You could look at Kappa. You could look at Gary Winogrand. You could look at We're going to look at Robert Frank. There's just a lot of stuff, a lot of handheld guys that were just kind of amazing and inspired me as I got started. So with Robert Frank, we're going to look at like a brief collection from his book, The Americans. If you don't know, The Americans by Robert Frank was a highly influential book in post-war America uh, in photography. It was published in France in 1958 and the following year in the United States. The photographs were notable for their distance view of both high and low strata of American society. The book as a whole created a complicated portrait of the period that was viewed as skeptical of contemporary values and evocative of the ubiquitous loneliness. Frank set out with his Guggenheim grant to do something new and unconstrained by commercial. I think that's a typo. I don't know what happened there. And made a new, now classical photography book, kind of in the spirit of like the beat writers. I don't know if you know who the beat writers are, but it'd be like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Burroughs, um, a lot of people. Actually, Jack Kerouac wrote the introduction. You don't know who he is. He wrote the book On the Road and some other really great books too. Dharma Bums would be one of those. So the photography that Frank was showing through his lens and like his point of view was really complicated in that it like looked at like the racial, it's like it's oddly, funny. I'm talking about this now. I just got off the phone with my brother talking about everything that's going on in Minneapolis, and here we are, so many years later. Um, but with these images, he was just trying to show something like that was not like crystal clean and sparkly and like, yay, America. It was kind of a rough around the edges. And you can see that in the images, the way that they're framing. Okay, so we want to think about the framing of these images and also, his point of view. Some of these he's like up, down, left, right, and also the moment, he's capturing things stopped in time. Okay. Also, what made these different is that they're gritty, like there's a lot of grain to them, and they're not like pristine. So it was a real departure from classical photography that happened till this point. Again, like great point of view. And I say that in the other part, like in the framing, think about what's obscuring the lens. Like look how he's putting us behind this gentleman here. We're looking through. He's also down low. He's obviously not that short, right? So when we look at these photographs, we want to consider that, like, where are we as the viewer when we're looking at these? Think of these as like windows. Think about where the photographer is in the image as well. How did they take this photo? Okay. So as like studying photography, we want to look at a photograph as not just a picture, but think of it as like a roadmap of like technically like, well, how did they make that? You can learn a lot from them in that way. Like with this image, think how close he is to this person, right? Like, so he's not using a zoom lens. Like when you look at those National Geographic pictures of tigers, you want to look at the lens that those guys are using. You're like a mile away. You know, I'm exaggerating. But here, Frank is using a camera um, with a lens that's a fixed lens, meaning like he can't zoom in and out. He has to get really close. It's a 50 millimeter lens. So he's kind of like, um, people call a 50 meter lens like a normal lens, meaning like it's like how your eyes see. It's not quite how your eyes see, but it's close. That's a great one. And he's just getting all these slices of humanity. Again, but we want to think about the frame. What's he leaving in? What is he leaving out? What is his point of view? And I'm not talking about like a political point of view, but like where in the photograph, you know? What is he trying to show us? Okay? What is he trying to show us with this like weird depth of field, this weird focus where we're back here? Okay? We're seeing their reaction. Okay? Why is he showing us a TV? You know? Who is that person? It's this old diner. But it's uncomfortable. It's like the table's lifting up this way. So he's kind of positioned the camera in a weird way to create this angle. Beautiful photograph. And they're all kind of haunting. They're kind of like poetic. It's a very clever photo. Obscuring the head with that. And like one thing that we want to look at or think about is these angles he's creating through. It's not always a clean kind of like everything lines up perfectly, you know? He's able to kind of tilt the camera in a way that it feels like quick. You know, it feels like almost as if he's walking by. Again, like point of view. He's over someone's shoulder, looking through. You know, what's going on here? Is he driving? Here we want to think about like shutter speed. You know, here he is like using the shutter to capture movement in action. Okay, so it's like a fast shutter speed, but not too fast because like there is like a little bit of blur here, but it's pretty sharp. And he wasn't afraid to like, again, like in terms of like how these broke the norms, like he wasn't afraid to, you know, specifically like say like look at this image. It's not perfect, but there's like this connection to a certain humanity that he was trying to show where he felt like this image was the one, you know, out of all of them. And I'm talking about how it's not perfectly crisp and, you know, you guys have to make perfectly crisp photos, but it's interesting to think about. Again, like look at how what he's choosing to show, how is that inferring, you know, the image? Like how is it complicating or either telling the story of whatever's going on here, you know? So again, the way he's cropping it, the way he's framing it, he's letting all of this be intentional, you know? Could he have waited till like whatever, the wind stopped or whatever, this comes down, or could he have backed up and, you know, could he have framed it another way? But here, you know, he's made this choice to have the American flag obscure that person. Again, it's just beautiful. here again, we're looking through. He's framing her with this body and this. It's a great one. Great. I love this one. Okay. How many more are there? Just gonna go through. It's beautiful. Okay. So this is Robert Frank for this week. Again, spend some time with these. Um, look them up online. Buy that book, Americans. I think everyone should have a copy. And study him. Okay. So he's kind of like our guru for this week. All right, that's it. The next one, we'll get right into the camera.